Now, I would like to talk about how this is different than counseling. And I know that there are similarities, and I think there are some big differences. I don't have a degree in counseling. And I've had a lot of courses, and I've done a lot of counseling. Even though I didn't have a degree, I'm not sure how I did that, but I was a counselor for college students for several years. And I've talked to a lot of counselors about the distinction between counseling and life coaching, counseling and coaching. So this is a work in progress, this distinction. And as I tell you from my point of view the difference between coaching and counseling, if I in some way offend any of you, or if in some way you think I'm off base, of course I want to know. And I realize that counseling is this huge term: therapy, psychotherapy, social work, counseling. It's huge, and it incorporates all kinds of disciplines. There are behavioralists, and there's a client-centered therapist, and there's the Gestalt therapist, and there's still some kind of the Freudian, there's the family structure therapist. There's a lot of different kind of therapy counseling, and I'm generalizing here. So, like with all generalizations, well, I'll make a few mistakes. But what I want to point out is that from everything I know and all the counselors I've talked to, what we're suggesting to do with people here is not the same. Now, one of the things you can do with your clients is get them counseling. Because some people, counseling is very, very valuable for some people. We'd want to send them off to a counselor. I do recommend, however, that you don't do counseling with your life coaching clients, even if you're a counselor. Why? Because the roles, I think, are so distinct that it will start to confuse the client. So if you want to be in a counseling relationship with your client, great. If you're a certified professional licensed counselor, I say go for it. If not, I'd send them to somebody more competent than you for counseling. But if you're a counselor and want to be in a coaching relationship with your client, just stay with that. Because here's the differences that I see. In these categories, first of all, diagnosis. Most counselors diagnose. They look for an emotional disorder. Now, even if they don't like that, because they're funded by insurance and they need a DSM-IV designation for their client, or just because of their training, they do look for a diagnosis. And diagnoses are called officially emotional disorders. Now, even if you don't think that it's an emotional disorder, that's part of counseling. Coaching, on the other hand, we're not even dealing with emotional disorders. As a matter of fact, if you have a client with an emotional disorder who's not receiving professional therapy, I would end the relationship. That's one of the several reasons that I've ended relationships with people in coaching, is because, from my point of view, they had an emotional disorder, to the best of my ability. You know, there's this big, thick book in my office, and then a little thinner one called the DSM-IV. It's a Diagnostic Statistical Manual of Emotional Disorders, or something like that. And you look in there, and it's got everything that can be psychologically wrong with someone. And I've studied it, and I've looked at it. My friend Stan took a whole course on it, and he's tried to teach me all these designations. And I know just enough to be dangerous. But I know enough that if I'm working with somebody that really has a serious emotional disorder, I think I know it. In which case, if they're not getting counseling, I end the relationship with them. Now, it'll take a while, but I don't want to be working with somebody who needs therapy and isn't getting it and might be using me as the excuse. So that's one category. Category two is approach. The fundamental approach that most counselors take versus the fundamental approach that I'm recommending in coaching. Most counselors, their fundamental approach is to discover the source of the problem, why we have the problem we have. You know, what happened? Why are we behaving this way? Not all counseling, I know that. Behavioral counselors wouldn't even deal with the source of the problem, but most counselors would. However, in life coaching, what we're discovering is not the source of the problem, but rather the goal. And the goal is, what does the problem look like solved? So, for example, somebody comes with a problem and they say, you know, I really feel nervous at night, and I just don't, I'm not sleeping well, and I'm just kind of jittery, and I'm feeling anxious. Now, most counselors would say, well, why? You know, what's behind this? What's the source? Which is fine. It's good counseling. I wouldn't do that. What I'm recommending in life coaching is that we first of all listen and see, well, what's the end result of the problem solved? In other words, what do you want? The person said, well, I want to sleep. I want to get rid of my anxiousness. I want to resolve the conflict, or whatever it is. Okay, we'll discover the goal. A good night's sleep and no anxiety. And then create multiple pathways. And you remember from this morning how important multiple is here. Multiple pathways to solve the problem or reach the goal. Now, one of those pathways might be psychotherapy or counseling. One of the many pathways might be. So that's another distinction.